Welcome back to Clubhouse Talks. Today we bring in Andy Brown, a student athlete at Knox College and founder of Hard Work Hoops Training. In this video, he breaks down what it's like starting this basketball training business as a college student and a step-by-step process for other student athletes looking to start this side gig business when back at home or at school. We go into detail about getting your first clients, growing your book of business, and some hard lessons he's learned along the way. Hope you enjoy. All right, welcome back to another episode of Clubhouse Talks, the unofficial name of this YouTube segment, where I'm interviewing different people, clients that we have that are starting their own businesses, coaches and leaders in their programs, and sharing their journeys and what they've learned along the way. Today I have on Andy Brown, who is senior at Knox, and amongst many other things is runs Hard Work Hoops Training. Andy, I'll have you introduce yourself a little bit more and what you do.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? Thanks for having me on. I'm Andy Brown. I go to Knox College. I'll be a senior, like we said. I play college basketball there. I'm a point guard. Sat a lot of my season out last year with injury, so hoping to have a better season this year, stay healthy. But I run a youth basketball program for 2nd through 8th grade mostly. I do have a few high schoolers. And I'm the owner and founder of the program, and I've been doing it for almost 5 years now. So it's been a great time, and I love every minute of it.
So almost 5 years would make it. You started at senior high school?
Yeah, senior year of high school.
Awesome.
Right
And
around,
then,
yeah.
go ahead.
Right before COVID started, actually, like in December before COVID started.
Dive into kind of how it shook it up, or so I think a lot of times the COVID shutdown kind of accelerated people's businesses in a way, kind of thought creatively about how to do different things around the community. But
Yeah,
so been doing it since end of high school or middle of high school. D3 athlete. I guess we could touch a little bit on the being a D3 athlete. Um, what's the time commitment for you at Knox College? How much time did you think you were going to have going into school in terms of all the commitments of academic, social, school, and then how much time do you end up having? It seems like you had a little bit because you've started this project as well, maybe more so in the summer. But tell us about that time commitment.
yeah. So the time commitment, it's pretty solid. It's not horrible, but it is a lot. So like, for example, we got our off-season schedule this week, and the NCAA actually just passed a new rule that you can have 8 practice days before the season starts. So usually you weren't allowed to have any practice days. So we actually are going to have 8 practice days before the season starts on October 15th. And we don't start till September 11th. So we got to kind of work those in quicker than some other schools do. So we'll probably have about 2 practices a week. And that is in addition to 4 weight trainings a week and 2 conditioning trainings a week. So some of those are like we'll have weights at 4 p.m. and then we'll have practice at 5 to 7. So in the off season, we are doing something every day. Sometimes, it's a 30-minute lift. Sometimes it's a lift and then 2-hour practice. But it's doable. And then during the season, we usually have, if we have games within 2 days, we don't lift. So we'll just have one practice that's usually 2.5 hours, and like a 30-minute film session. So it'll take up like 3 hours a day, which isn't terrible, but and all the guys love doing it. So we do it. And then, yeah, game days are obviously, those are the biggest commitments, especially when you have to travel. It is tough. We do have some games where we play Lawrence, which is 5 hours away from Knox. So it's a 10-hour round trip just driving. So that doesn't include, the game, and then, which is another 3 hours. We travel with the girls team, which is another 2 hours for their game. So we got that, and then we're staying there overnight. And, if it's a Tuesday night game, we're missing class and stuff. So that does definitely take up a big time commitment. But the teachers have been great working with a lot of the players, and the school is really good with, recording the class or something for us and coming in for office hours. So as a player, I actually do better when I'm playing a sport in the classroom. Like you'll see my grades are actually better in the fall and winter than spring term because I'm in season and just I just do better that way with being active and having to have less time restraints on homework and stuff. It's easier to get it done, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like having, especially in the college world, having structure can help for a lot of
Yes.
different people.
Yeah.
Otherwise, your 5 hours could feel like a half hour when you have nothing to do. And 1 hour could be really productive when you know, hey, I only have an hour to get this lunch in and whatever. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
What's the what do you feel in your time with on the bus? Are you able to be productive with homework? Is that like socializing time? What's that? 5 hours on a bus to Lawrence seems like a
So
lot.
on the way there, like usually on the drive there for me is very like we have a lot of early mornings. So like I'll actually sleep a little bit. I'll try to at least. Sometimes it's hard. But like a lot of guys will bring like a pillow and a blanket and we'll try to sleep a little bit. Especially those far trips, like 5 hour trips, definitely. If we only have like an hour or 2 hours, we'll usually, just talk or stuff or listen to music. That's usually like the things guys do. There are a few guys who like are in like the science majors who have a lot more homework, who are definitely asking people for their personal hotspots, asking the bus driver for the Wi-Fi to get their homework done. Luckily, my majors that I've been taking haven't been too um, intense, and I've been able to like get work done before, or, get work done ahead of time. But I know for those science guys, it's a lot of work all the time. But and on the
That's a
way
grind.
back, usually after a win, it's a great bus ride home. After a loss, it's quite quiet. So, especially if the girls, because sometimes I travel with the girls team. If the girls and the boys win, then it's a fun bus ride back. Just everyone's having a good time socializing. But if there's some losses, it's a pretty quiet. Everyone kind of sticks to themselves. Bus
I can
ride.
imagine. Although that long of a bus ride, maybe after like 2.5, or is it really 5 hours total? Or is it 2.5 round trip? I mean, 2.5 there, two
Uh,
and a
to
half back.
Lau- to Lau- to Lawrence, it's 5 hours. To Ripon, it's
Oh my
five
god.
hours. To Lake Forest College is 3.5. So like that's just there, and then
Yeah.
double that for round trip. So we play a lot of teams that are pretty far. The
Yeah.
closest team is Monmouth, and they're 20 minutes. Other than that, it's at least 2 hours for every other team. So it's
It's a grind.
definitely some long bus rides. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to paint kind of what your day to day life at school was a little bit to kind of show the listeners what you're up to during the school year, especially in season. And I also want to paint what you do on the business side of things, explain Hard Work Hoops, what it is, when it runs, and the scope of it or the size of it as it is now.
Yeah. So Hard Work Hoops is at about this summer we had 82 kids in our travel basketball program, and the really only stuff that I run is in the summer. So we run a summer program that usually starts around June 1st and will go until um, end of August. So it's about 3 months of stuff. And we just run travel basketball, individual training, group training, and I host this year. We hosted 3 weeks of summer camp. We had 2 weeks of summer camp during the middle of the year, and then back to school camp, which was right before school started for a lot of the players. And then we do run a winter camp every year, and that's usually that camp usually sells out pretty quick because there's not much going on for those kids during Christmas time, and all the parents obviously want to get their kids out of the house and get them active. Um, so yeah, in
Awesome.
terms of hard work hoops, that's what it's all about.
Cool. So you're at eight. You said 82 players this summer. When you first started, how did you create like your first team? Was it more of a camp? Was it you and a buddy? Like, how did that work?
So actually, I'm not sure. Do you remember Jack Trainer at all?
Yeah, I know of the name.
Football
Small town.
player.
Yeah.
So when I was in eighth grade, his mom had posted on Facebook saying that his summer job fell through, and he was like looking to do individual training. And so I signed up for that and I loved it. And I was like, this is so cool. Like, this is like a senior who just graduated. He was like the captain of the basketball team. He was going to Dartmouth to play football. and like he was charging like $20. Like my mom's like, this is great, it's cheap, like he's doing a great job, like all this. And so when I became a senior, I asked my mom to do the same thing. I said, hey, can you post on, Facebook and say, I think there's like a Moms of Lake Forest page that a bunch of moms are on. And so my mom threw it on
Mm-hmm.
there and was like, my son, I don't think she said a summer job fell through, but she's like, he's the captain of the basketball team. He's looking to do individual training for, I think it charged like $10 a training session just to like, get a few kids and like make a few extra bucks as a high school kid. And I had in it was like December of my senior year. It was like right before my senior year that I had like one kid, like junior summer. I had like one or two kids respond. So I did like a few training sessions with two different kids. One kid who actually still plays in the program, one who doesn't play anymore. Um, so that started kind of like just a few kids. And then once COVID hit, um, I had nothing going on, so I posted again on Facebook, hey, my summer job fell through because of COVID. I'll do individual training sessions or small group training sessions with anyone that's interested. We'll do it outside. We'll make sure that we're very,
Mm-hmm.
COVID friendly, staying 6 feet apart or whatever. And within 2 months, I probably had 30 to 40 kids I was doing individual trainings or group trainings with. So right before I
What
went to
ages are
school, like I
those?
was at that time, it was mostly seventh and eighth graders. So
Okay.
mostly seventh and eighth graders. And I think I had like 25 seventh and eighth graders, and I had
Wow.
a group of like five or six third graders at the time. So they were like, those are kind of like the two groups that I worked with a lot. And I would go to Deer Path. We had like a group of kids that like a lot of mornings at 8 a.m. There'd be like 20 kids and me at Deer Path. And I just drew drills with them. And then I'd set up scrimmages and stuff. And I was charging like $10 a kid and it was super cheap for the kids. And like the parents, like, we love that you're doing this. Like no one, like there's nothing open right now. Like no one's doing anything like this. Like this is amazing for all these kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then so after that great summer, um, I was in my freshman year at college at Knox, and our coach told us that our season's going to be delayed until December 1st, I think it was. So I was going to be home from, or January 1st it was. So I was going to be home from Thanksgiving until January 1st at the minimum. And so I had reached out to a few gyms, and I found this small little gym, and it was like a little warehouse. It was like half a court um, in Lake Bluff and like by the Harley Davidson. Maybe it was a little bit bigger than half court. It had like half court and then like a 3/4 court. So you could definitely get some games going and stuff in there. And I had posted on Facebook that I was going to host clinics there. And the gym was super cheap. It was great. And I had like let her know like these are the hours I want to rent, and I had sent her all the money and stuff. And um, I and I posted on Facebook, Instagram, and within 5 days, the clinic sold out. So I think it was like 4 days of clinics, and it was completely sold out based on like the numbers you could have for COVID in a gym. It was completely sold out. Um, and I even had girls stuff going on too. Like I'd hired a girls coach, and she was going to have some girls stuff going on too. And in this whole process, like I had to, like this whole thing, like it sold out. So like I was at the point where like I had to get an LLC, I had to get insurance, and all these things I had never thought of that I needed to get. I was doing just to start this. What
Mm-hmm.
at the time I thought was going to be 4 weeks of basketball. Um, and then December, it was like mid-December rolls around, and I'm still doing clinics, and our coach like sets up a Zoom meeting and tells us our season's canceled. Like we're done. We're not coming back. You're actually gonna be home until February 15th at the earliest. And that's when you're gonna come back for school. The first, 6, 7 weeks of class for winter term are gonna be online. And like you're gonna take class from home. So I decided to keep running clinics. I bought some more gym rental space, and I had a bunch of kids in the gym still. And at the time you couldn't play AAU travel basketball in Illinois. So what I did was I reached out to a bunch of the parents individually, and I had actually called one parent and asked her. I had this idea. I said, Wisconsin's only 20 minutes away. Let's take, 8 kids and let's go up to Wisconsin and play in some games, because these kids, like, high school seasons can't. I had a bunch of high schoolers. High school season canceled. Seventh, eighth graders. Their middle school seasons were canceled, and there's no youth basketball for third through fifth grade. So
Mm-hmm.
these kids have nothing going on. The only basketball they're playing is with me, and it's the winter time, and there's no outdoor sports. So this is the only thing these kids get to do. There's some kids who didn't play basketball who were coming because they needed activity.
Mm-hmm.
And their parents were like, he plays lacrosse, but we need him, like, he's got to be active. So can you know, teach him a little basketball? And I was like, yeah, sure. So and then I had reached out to a few parents, and I think it took like a week for me to figure out that I was going to bring 7 teams. I think it was 7 teams up to Wisconsin for a weekend to play in tournament games. And I had like called the tournament, and I was like, hey, like, I got 7 teams coming, and like I'm going to sign them all up. Is there a way we can work around, like, me being able to coach all these games?
I
And
was
so
gonna
I
say,
was coaching
is it you
Saturday.
and 7 teams, or is it? Do you have somebody else coaching with you?
So at that time, it was just me. It was just me. I actually had to call a buddy because like there was a conflict with the game. I had to call a buddy and be like, "Hey, can you coach?" And like the parents like are like just happy that the kids are playing, so they didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, he was on the varsity basketball team with me, so he knew what he was talking about. And so I coached probably through like 3 or 4 weekends. I was coaching 10 to 15 games a weekend, just because these kids
Wow.
got nothing going on, and it was great. I had nothing going on either. I was taking classes from home. Like, I was sitting in a Zoom class at 10 a.m., sitting in a Zoom class at 1 p.m., and then going and coaching from 4 to 7 every night, running clinics and practices and stuff. Um, so I think we played in like 3 or 4 tournaments, and then unfortunately I had to go back to school, and I obviously couldn't keep coaching. So I had told all the parents I was going to host a summer program. So at my freshman going into sophomore summer. And so that was the first summer that I truly had like travel basketball under hard work hoops with an LLC, insurance, everything. And then I've been doing it for the past 3 summers now with AAU. And it's grown to this summer we had 8 teams, with 82 players throughout the program. And it was a great time. So yeah.
Damn. It's funny how maybe it would have been something different, but had COVID not hit, the story's got to be different in terms of like all the parents being like ready to send their kids somewhere, and you being like available to coach. And
Yeah.
it's funny you're saying like, unfortunately, we were going back to school, whereas most college kids were like, we get to go back to school. You were like, I had something rolling here. We were like,
Yeah.
cooking with
Yeah.
gas.
Yeah. I was a little sad because like I was like making some money, and like I was doing something. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
getting to be active. And that's what it was for me. Like I was just getting to be active. I was getting to be in the gym and play basketball. I wasn't getting to do that at school, because at school we were wearing masks. During practice, you weren't allowed to pass a ball to a teammate because they were too worried about the spread of COVID. Like you had to be, our coach would have 6 guys in the gym at a time, 1 guy at each hoop, and you'd be doing individual ball handling, driving to the basket, all these different drills with a mask
Mm-hmm.
on. So it was for me, it was miserable, because like I thought it
Yeah.
was like I was just very miserable. It was very tough to like make friends. Like it was very tough to hang out with people. I lived in the basement of a dorm with no window, so it was a very like
Yeah.
gloomy, dark time for a lot of us guys, because there's 6 of us living in a basement, and I didn't have a window. The other guys had a window, but it was to a grate, so it's not like a legit window. So it was very dark down there, and we were playing a lot of Xbox, just hanging out a lot, but didn't really get to meet anyone else or do much.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't even really get to spend much time with the other basketball guys, because when we were on the court, we had a mask, and it was like you come in with your own basketball and then you leave. And, so it was definitely a tough time. And getting that being able to coach hard work hoops during that winter was just awesome because I was able to talk to people and, be active. So
Hmm.
yeah, it was good for me too.
It's a nice thing about, I mean, I think working any job in college gets you out and like feeling a little more like autonomous and free to like in control of your life to do things, especially if you're starting your own business in college. For you, I would guess like, talking with all these different parents, working with their kids, and like scheduling these gym times and drive them to Wisconsin, like gets your brain thinking about like so many different things and taking control. Whereas like if you're a student that didn't have those opportunities or didn't take advantage of that, like you said, if you're in the basement, you can kind of get in a rut and not feel like kind of get stuck. And so I feel like that was probably also a good opportunity for you, like you said, just get out and do things and think creatively, entrepreneurially. There's a business side of it, obviously making money, and there's also like just like the mental health side of it. It's like this is great. I'm like doing stuff. So that's great.
Yeah.
I want to dive
Yeah.
into three different kind of parts of it. One is like logistics side of like, think about talking to yourself a few years ago of like nailing down locations and figuring out contracts, insurance, like crap like that you probably didn't think about in detail when you first started, like all those different nitty gritty things. Well, I talk about like your jumping into being a trainer in these clinics. Like I'm assuming you had experience being, you know, advanced athlete and going through all these different things yourself, but having actually learned how to coach kids was probably a learning curve. Um, and then the side of it too of just like growing your teams and getting kids involved. So those are three things I want to like dive into over the next 30, 40 minutes. So on the trying to think what the first place to start is. I guess the first place to start for you was like you found some parents and kids that wanted some time either to learn basketball or just to get active. Let's dive into that as like let's call this like a 5-10 minute special on like somebody's a D3 athlete, they're home for the holidays, they're home for summer, and they're interested in kind of getting a little book of business of clinics or teams. The Facebook mom thing is very real. There is a strong like connection of the moms on
There's,
Facebook.
yeah,
So talk to me like,
yeah,
landing
there
your
is.
first few calm clients, landing your first few clients. If you had to give advice to little Andy Brown getting started, getting your first few clients, I would assume somebody getting started on this would feel like I don't know where to begin. I don't have training on how to coach and things like that. What's your advice to that person?
Yeah. So for someone who hasn't like doesn't have training with coaching yet, I would definitely start with like working for a program first and kind of being bottom level. So I actually worked for New Vision Athletics, NVA, and I loved it and I learned so much there. There's little things that I didn't even know about that I learned. Like I played high school basketball, so I didn't know how to coach a first grader. I didn't know how to coach a second grader. I didn't know what level they were at. So just being in a program and seeing, first through eighth grade, seeing that, like what's different in first grade versus eighth grade. What kind of things do I need to tell a first grader to do in a game versus an eighth grader? In first grade, you got to tell the kid to dribble, 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 pass, dribble in and shoot. Like you have to tell the kids exactly what to do so they learn how to play. While in eighth grade, you're like, you got to look for that back cut. Like there's so many, like, and when I first started coaching, I was telling a first grader, like, you got a back cut there. He's like, what's a back cut? So
Yeah.
just being able to learn like the different levels and like being able to adapt was definitely huge for me. And then
Well,
I guess
getting in
going
that
into
ground
start, like,
floor, that you're talking like, getting someone in the ground floor of like, with a program, a camp or something like that. They're from what my experience was too, like I coached like 7 and 8-year-old soccer kids. So like it wasn't really coaching, it was just more babysitting. But you reach out to local
yeah,
programs around you, any sport, it gets you familiar with like youth kids and how they think and where they're at, like you said. And I would guarantee every program would accept your help if you're like, hey, I'm an athlete, a high school athlete, I want to help out.
yeah,
They'll accept you with open
yeah,
arms, like please, we need like anybody
yeah,
that can help us and
yeah. They
like
always,
with energy,
yeah,
right? So I would
yeah,
suggest
especially
like reach out to everybody. Go ahead.
yeah, especially like the park district is always looking for guys because at Knox, like they'll ask some of us, they're like, hey, can you coach our Park District soccer team. They're asking like the basketball guys and like stuff. So they're always looking for coaches, even if they're not that part of the sport. So yeah, I mean, even if it's just volunteering too at first, like volunteering for your little brother's basketball team or whatever it is, just to get some experience. Because once you start going into, my advice for like anyone who's trying to go into that is to start there, and then you want to start small and really focus on those few players that you have in this industry, and especially in like the Lake Forest and Lake Bluff community. And I'm sure it's like that with a lot of communities. The word travels so fast, so good or bad. Like if you're doing a great job, the word's going to travel. If you're doing a bad job, the word's going to travel. Everyone's going to know. Like if I was a jerk coaching, everyone would be like, "Oh, that Andy Brown guy's like not a nice guy." Like, and that word would travel so fast. So just having that energy that you were talking about is just so huge. And like, whether if you're emailing parents, texting parents, whatever it is, having that quick response is also important so that they know you're invested and know that like you want to see this kid get better at the sport, whether it's basketball, soccer, football, because it could be it could be any sport that you're trying to start, and you really got to be all in. That's my
Yeah.
biggest advice. If you're starting, you got to be all in, and you got to start small, and hope it grows. The marketing stuff is hard. The mom's page is great. There's also like I did a Facebook boost, so you can do like Facebook ads, which I don't know how much really helped. But there are some things like that you can do, or like Instagram boost to like get in the area, and stuff like that. But yeah,
Hmm.
so
Yeah, I feel like
you got to start small, and you got to.
whether you're in business, or I mean, again, this is I say business and sports, or a sports business is a business. Like you can try to, if you're starting a business, a lot of people can get stuck in like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do these paid Instagram ads to get these new people in and have this nice Instagram page and all stuff like that. It's like really, like you said, word travels fast, and if you're just serving people good stuff, like they're gonna talk to each other. So who's gonna get services for their kids to train? Moms in town. So how do you get moms in town to have their kids? You go to the
Yeah,
Facebook moms page and you let them know that a high school captain is willing to train their kids. Done deal. And that's, you
yeah,
don't need any Instagram page to do that or paid anything. So starting like
yeah,
that is,
yeah.
and whether you're a business too, like what's the most basic thing? Like if you need to serve coffee or hot dogs, whatever it is, like just go where the people are versus trying to make this paid Instagram ads, this big business thing. Like just be really
Yeah,
simple.
yeah,
Keep it simple is what I'd say.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think I've in my entire time of Hard Work Hoops, I think I've paid $100 in advertisements, and that was the Facebook boost that I think didn't do anything. Like I really
just to
don't
try
think
it
helped
out.
much. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, just to try it out, just to see how it worked, honestly. And it didn't. From what I could tell, it was people were signing up from word of mouth and stuff, and from the Facebook moms page. So
Hmm.
so yeah,
Yeah. So you said,
but
getting
definitely
started. Sorry, this thing is a little bit of a lag, but you were mapping out. So getting
it's
started
all
ground level, signing up for some like local programs, just getting familiar with kids. You're not going to get rich off that. Maybe make some beer money in college, or maybe you're just volunteering. Best thing you get is experience,
yeah,
though. You get to meet parents too. Parents
yeah,
give you feedback, like, and you kind of become like this
yeah.
liaison between the two ages.
Mhm. Yeah, totally, totally.
So,
And I think what you said earlier, like saying that you're a captain, like when you post, like whatever you're posting, like highlight what you're good at. Like I highlighted that I was the varsity captain, and that I was a point guard, and that I was going to play college basketball. Like that's what I highlighted when I posted like on Facebook with my mom. Like everything that I said was like I was a high school varsity basketball captain. I'm going to play college basketball. And for other people it could be different. For other people it could be I was the manager of the basketball team. I got to sit in with Coach LaScala and listen to the meetings and listen to what they talked about. So I have a different side of, the coaching. Like whatever it is, highlight it, and make it like make it good. Like tell it, like show people
mhm.
like why you think you're going to be good at this. Sell yourself to everybody.
Yeah, there's a big part of selling yourself. And again, a local community, as when you're in high school, maybe you don't think of it this way, or maybe you do. You eat it up that you're a varsity athlete, but like for parents, like to know that a varsity athlete wants to work with a kid is like exciting. So like you said, be confident in yourself, and like whether you're a 6 man off the bench or like whatever it is, like say, hey, I'm a practice squad guy. I know, like you said, you can play into all these different things
Yeah,
about
exactly.
yourself. Um,
Yeah,
and the energy is, especially when you're a coach, is contagious. So you started with the mom's page. You
yeah,
started by
yeah,
doing some volunteer or like introductory coaching, and then you've got your first few kids, and like you said, you do good work, word will spread. So from your first few kids into getting a team together, organizing like multiple teams and going to tournaments, what's that look like? Are you asking other parents, hey, can you tell other people about it? Are parents talking marketing for you? What's the next step of getting actual full teams together?
So I think what helped me grow from individual training to small group training to AAU was when I was doing individual training, it was a little bit more expensive. So what I told parents is like, hey, if, you know, Bobby, whoever I was coaching, wants to have more, like if you want to do this, like I can do this with, if he has a buddy that he wants to do this with, I can charge half the price for each of you, and if they want a third, I can charge a third of the price for everybody. And all of a sudden you have a group of 5 kids that you're charging a little bit less than you would have for individual training for each kid. And now you have 5 kids in a small group, and now you have 5 parents to be like, wow, my kid just left and loves this, right? So now you have 5 parents who can go tell more people about it. And then, so I actually sat, for me, for growing the business, for AAU. So once I had those kind of smaller groups and clinics and stuff, I think I sat in my room for probably 3 or 4 hours calling parents and asking like, hey, would you be interested in this? And what I was asking was if they'd be interested in going to, at the time it was going to Wisconsin to play travel basketball and playing a few games during the day. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like selling parent, like I'm like, kids need to, like I'm like, if the kids want to get better, they got to play. That's how they're going to get better. And like I was, some of the parents, it was just like yes right away. It's like, yeah, like I yes. Some
Yeah.
parents, it was like, well, tell me more about it. And that's when you have to be like, well, this is why it's good, and you have to go into it knowing what you're going to talk about. And yeah, so for me, I had a little bit of luck where there was nothing going on, so it's a little bit easier to be like, well, your kid's got nothing going on, so let's go play. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, definitely, sometimes you gotta make those calls, you gotta make those texts of, hey, is there anyone else you think that would be interested for a smaller group training, or just throwing out the idea like, hey, I'm thinking about trying to bring 8 guys to a tournament, and I'll get them jerseys or whatever, and you just got to throw that idea out there. And sometimes parents will be like, I don't know. And some parents will be like, I love that idea. And once you find
Mm-hmm.
a parent that loves that idea, you gotta talk to them. Cause I have had parents be like, hey, like I'm looking to start a team, like with a few of his buddies, like, can you organize it? And I have had parents reach out to 10 other kids and bring me a team.
Yeah.
So you do it, like, there are times where that's going to happen, and you gotta sometimes call a few parents and tell them what it's all about, and or send a long text about what it's all about or whatever they're looking for. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you've brought in a few kids. You've done a good job. The word starts to spread amongst those parents, and this is like the business side of it all. It's like you get your first few customers. Make sure you serve them very well so that they can get you your next customers. And
Yeah,
it's kind of funny when you're working with kids and coaching and everything, like to call them customers, or because there also is a very personal relationship side of coaching and building a program. But from the business side of building this up, you've got, your first few loyal customers, and that's who's going to be getting your referrals and getting your next few customers in the door.
yeah, yeah,
So I could see that importance of doing a good job with the first few ones. And then it's not like, hey, this is just going to happen for you. You've done a good job, and parents are going to say, here's a team. You have to make yourself available, respond quickly, like you said, show them that you care. Um, and you have to make, like,
yeah,
essentially you were doing cold calls. You were like calling up parents, being like, hey, you're going down this list. If if you're working in a call center, you're like,
Yeah.
I have a leads list. I'm going to call up these parents. I'm going to mark them. Hey, this person's interested, not interested, and you start building a team from there. It's the same thing in
Yeah.
business. You have the
Yeah.
leads, you call them
Yeah.
up, go down the list. So from there, you get your team, and I could see it. At that point where you are in your business, a few years in, coming back every summer, those parents get excited for you to come back, for the kids to have a program in the summer. And then, like what you said, was importance of timing. You said you got lucky about the kids not having something else to do. But that could be something still to take away, is if you are looking to wedge into like a busy time of year. Let's say there's a lot of stuff going on. Find the gap in between different sports seasons and say, I'm going to launch like a 1 week camp, because parents are really busy and they don't want to like do all this stuff. So maybe you just launch a few days, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, totally. Like during my winter camp is at a time where there's nothing going on. My back to school camp is at a time where there's no sports going on and there's no summer camps. That week when there's no school hasn't started yet, but summer camps are all over. Like you got to find those, because there are a few of those weeks in the year. Find those weeks and yeah, totally.
That's the gap in the market. And it's also like other big AAU programs, they're moms and dads themselves, they're established, and they're not going to work during the holidays and stuff like that. And a kid in college is going to want to
Yep.
fill their time, they want to grind it out, and the parents of those children want to fill it
Yeah,
too.
they're like,
So
yeah,
awesome. I think
yeah,
that's
100%.
great insight for somebody that's like, again, in college wanting to start their program, is like fill in those gaps that other people are not willing to do. Um, and then just put in the mom's page, start filling up the tea. All right, that's good for like starting and launching, getting those first steps in. You probably do your first few trainings, Venmo, cash, check, I'm assuming, but then you start selling out your clinics, and you said you realize, I need to establish an LLC, I need to do X, Y, and Z. One, how did you first realize you need to establish a business? Is that from parents telling you? Did you learn in college that? Or like for me personally, I realized that because for me to launch my website and taking credit cards, they asked for an LLC number, and I was like, "What's an LLC number?" Got an LLC. Like, so how did you end
Yeah.
up realizing you knew how to actually establish a business?
It was actually my dad. My dad was telling me, he was like, you need to do this, and I was kind of like, oh, like I don't need to, like it's fine. And then I sat in on it was actually my college basketball coach. I was in his coaching of basketball class my freshman year because I wanted to take an easy class, and I'm like, oh, my head coach is doing this, so it'll be easy. And I actually learned so much in that class because he actually started an AAU program, and so he had a ton of teams, and that now he's coaching college basketball. And at the time, like, this is so cool. So I went up after class and I asked him, like, hey coach, like I actually have a few questions about class. And he was probably like, what? like, and I was like, yeah, so I actually run some basketball stuff. Like, how'd you start all this? So he actually gave me some really good advice about um, starting a program and how he got an LLC, and how that really helps like back your business, and like getting insurance so you don't get like in trouble with anything. And I was like, so then I went back to my dad and I'm like, Dad, like, you're right, I need to get an LLC and insurance. And he's like, yeah, I know, I was telling you all this. So I was like, all right. And then I actually had remembered that one of my parents of a kid I coached out of like those 30 kids that I had started with, had told me that she was a lawyer. And so I was actually kind of looking on like how to get an LLC, and like legal Zoom or whatever was like going to cost a lot of money, and I didn't have a ton of my own money at the time, and I didn't want to ask my like dad or like whoever for like a personal loan. So like I had asked her like what I should do with it, and she went and did everything for me. Like she did it all for me. I paid like the bill and everything and stuff, and like definitely gave her kid a few free trainings and stuff. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I definitely learned in a college course
Yeah,
coaching a basketball that I need to get an LLC. So
that's the beauty of a
yeah,
small school. You have classes like that, you could take advantage of.
yeah,
Um, and
yeah,
I
yeah,
also
yeah,
you work with the parent thing, like it might seem like a lucky happenstance, which partly it is, but that's like the beauty of working with all those parents and being a young kid who's like working hard for their kids is like you're going to meet a lot of parents who have actual jobs and have connections, and they're going to want to help you out if you're helping them out and doing a good job. So
Yeah, totally, totally.
sure, you were
Yeah.
lucky to find that connection, but at the same time you put yourself in a right spot to like network, and that's like the beauty of networking is people want to help out um, people like you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, there are definitely some small times where like even I had tonsil surgery a few months ago, and when I woke up from my surgery, the uh, the nurse there was one of the kids I coached. She was the mom of a kid I coached. So it was nice that she would like having those little connections is definitely great in the community.
Awesome. So I won't dive too much into like establishing an LLC in the insurance part, but just from when you first get started, where you first get told about that, at least for me, I was like, what the hell is all this stuff? Like, I have no idea where to begin. This is, like you said, maybe to your dad, like, I don't need to do this. This is like for like legitimate businesses. I'm just running like this little thing. Um, but once I got into it, I realized, and you got help, like everyone kind of find a way to get help with it. It was like, okay, I just had to fill out a few forms, do these things. Kind of, was it easier than you had expected to go? Obviously, you had help, but for somebody who's getting started, is it as daunting as it seemed to be at the beginning?
Um, I think it was pretty tough to start actually because like when I was starting, I was doing all this for my college dorm.
Hmm.
Like I was calling gyms from my college dorm, and I was living in the basement, so the connection was also horrible, which didn't help. And
Yeah.
I was a college kid, so I got a few a few people didn't want to rent me gyms. There were gyms where
Right.
I like no, who had said no. There were two gyms who said no to me, and just because like I was a college kid and I like there was one guy who and I felt bad too about it and I probably ruined it. But I was a college kid, so I'd be up at like 2 a.m. And so I had responded to a text that he had sent at like 2 a.m. And he had sent me this text back like, "Don't text me at 2 a.m. Like I'm trying to sleep." And I was like, and that gym kind of fell through. I don't know if he was in a bad mood or what, but
Yeah.
I was like, all right. And then I got lucky finding another gym. But yeah, it was definitely hard to start. There was definitely, especially as like, I was 18, 19 years old at the time. A lot of people are like, I don't want to rent you, I don't know. I think it would have been like 40 hours of gym space. There's no way. Like you
Hmm.
know. Um, so yeah. And then, yeah, it was tough for sure
Yeah.
to
I
start with
was
that.
gym space
Um,
finding gym space like one of the harder parts of getting started, of like figuring out where you're going to set up.
I think finding gym space is probably the hardest thing to do in my program. Every year there has been a problem with gym space, and I've had to solve it. I mean, there's definitely been some times where I had one gym that I had rented for the whole summer, and I had told them all the hours that I wanted, and they said yes. And then a week later, they emailed me actually saying that they were redoing their floors and they can't rent to me, and they hope that I can find somewhere else. And I had already sent practice schedules to parents. I'd already sent times, and I was like devastated. I'm like, what am I gonna do? Like, I'm done. So I was like, probably for like 2 days, I called like 10, 15 different gyms asking if they could accommodate these hours. And luckily I found Highwood Rec, who I've used for the past 2 summers now. And they accommodated pretty much every single hour I had asked for. And then they've done great the past 2 years. So I absolutely love the hard work keeps home so far. So they came in and saved the day for me.
That's
But
great.
it is really hard to run gyms. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I also feel like is it a mix of like availability and is the or like price, or like is it really expensive to rent certain gyms where you're like I can't afford that with what I'm charging, or like is it more availability? Are they all the same price about the
A little
rates?
bit of both, actually. So there are some gyms where I've reached out to, and they're like, hundreds of dollars per hour, and I'm just like, what? But I get it. I mean, they run a business, and if people are going to pay that much, then you
Hmm.
know, rent it out. But and luckily the rec center is a lot cheaper than that. But yeah, so it is a little bit of pricing and some expensive rates, and I don't want to drive an extra 10 minutes for a nicer gym that's going to be way more expensive when we still have like all you need is two hoops, right? You
Hmm.
need a full court um, to practice. So um, the availability was also tough at some of those gyms. Some of the gyms are like, well, I can do this week, but not this week. So, and I'm trying to rent for the whole summer. So it's
Hmm.
definitely tough. And then once there's programs in a gym, like they have priority. So if, for example, everyone knows All in Athletics. If All in Athletics has been renting this gym for 5 years, they're going to be the priority because they have been doing it. And I totally like that makes sense.
Hmm.
So you got to find a gym that nobody's rented yet, which is obviously really tough, especially in this industry. Especially in this area too, there's so much basketball being played.
Hmm.
Yeah.
The that one warehouse type gym that you found. So I think that was probably perfect for you when you were first getting started. How do you find these like rogue courts
Yeah.
like that?
Usually like a parent tells me about it. A parent had told me about that gym that there was actually a mom who had built the court for her kid because there's nothing going on. So she was, and I think she had like 10 kids or something. So she needed a place for her kids to run around during COVID, which totally makes sense. And so they
Hmm.
had just built it, and I'd called her and asked, hey, can I rent? And so she had started rentals and stuff. And I had um, her kids, kind of the deal with her renting the gym was that her kids could play for free. And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, um, so yeah, I mean, that was like a great thing for her and a great thing for me, a great thing for the other coaches that rented from her too. So yeah,
Awesome.
it was a lot of
Can't
parents
imagine the
reach
headaches
out.
of logistics. Yeah. Um, all right. I feel like I can get into like a lot of the details too. We won't get too far into it. But the just the general layout of your summers as you're going into your summer, how did you map out? And maybe you didn't. Maybe you're like, I'm just going to send it and get people in and find places to go. But map out. Now you have like you said 8 teams past summer.
Yeah.
So you have 8 teams. You have practices. You're going to games. Uh, talk about if you have other coaches involved, and then if kind of like a little bit of financial. You don't have to give us specifics in terms of the money, but like tournament fees, the booking fees, how you kind of kept track of all that going into the summer.
So in terms of coaches, I've hired a few coaches and they've all been great. Um, and I've hired guys that were varsity basketball players at Lake Forest. That's all I've hired. And for the girls program, varsity captain at Lake Forest. So obviously very high range of players. Most of the players played college basketball or had the opportunity to play college basketball. So definitely high IQ guys. And then in terms of keeping track of money and stuff, I did all the accounting work. So I do all that. I have a fee tracker and I have a customer payment tracker that I fill out usually daily,
What is that? Excel
especially during the
spreadsheets,
season. Google Sheets.
Google Sheets. Yeah.
So I use Google. Yeah, and then I do. So yeah, Excel, same thing. So I do all that, and yeah, I mean, I learned a lot in my business courses about that kind of stuff. I learned about, what can you write out? What do you need to track and all that stuff? So what do you need to claim and everything? So I definitely have learned a lot in those courses. And they definitely helped me out a lot. I also had I was lucky that my parents were both very financially savvy. So they helped me out a lot with, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, definitely was not easy at first, but at this point, I mean, it's become second nature.
Hmm. All right. And the last part here is I feel like hard for people when they're getting started too. You said when you first started, you're like, I'm gonna charge $10, whatever it is. I'm just trying to like kind of get started in things. And now you're still in college, so you're not quite like, this is not your full time gig and you're not trying to like make a full living off of it. But
Right.
in terms of finding the prices for you to set, was it difficult for you to find out how much to charge? Are you still trying to figure that out in terms of your fees? How did that grow and evolve over time?
Yeah, so for me, I think the biggest thing, like I've been charging a very similar price of AAU since I started, and I like to keep it that way. Obviously, I'm a college kid, so I'm not making a living
Mm-hmm.
wage, so it's a lot easier to keep the prices down. But for private trainings, I've definitely had to up the price just because like my time has become more valuable with coaching. It's really tough to find time to do those individuals just because I have so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
I was working two jobs this summer, so I was working at a summer camp and also working hard work hoops. So that added an extra, like, I only have, 2 hours out of the each day to like do a private. So if you do grow to that bigger point, you can start to charge more just because you have, if you're selling out camps, you can charge more. That's
Mm-hmm.
when I kind of figure out like that's when you can start to charge a little bit more because if it's supply and demand, right? It's like you learn all this in econ class your freshman year of college. If you're in business, you learn all about that. If your supply, like if your demand is at the max, like you can start charging more, and you gotta. Obviously, it's a lot easier to do the math in a class when they give you the numbers, find the equilibrium point
Mm-hmm.
of that. But yeah, I honestly probably don't have the best like I have no idea if it's right or not. I think most programs like you have no idea if it's right. I think for me, as long as I keep having stuff going on, and for me, I'm paying for like silly college expenses, um,
Mm-hmm.
like going out and stuff, or buying a few new clothes or things like that. I don't have to. I luckily still live under my parents' roof, so I don't have to pay rent or anything yet.
Mm-hmm.
Soon I will have to, but but yeah, so being able to keep the prices down and keep the business going is great for me. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, especially like you said, kids in college, like take advantage of that's like a competitive advantage in the market right there for you. Is like you don't have all those extra living expenses you might have if you're looking up to be with your parents over the
Yeah.
summer and stuff like that. So figure out what your goals are. Like, hey, maybe I just want to make beer money and get some clothes on the weekends. Price it out that way,
Yeah.
and then over the course of your college career, you can build your business, like you said, to the point where you start selling out those clinics. You can raise your price, and then hopefully as you're exiting college, if you want to continue doing it, you have a higher price because you've proven over 4 years what you've done. People want to be a part of it. Um, it seems like starting when you're starting out and you're grinding and you're young, like take advantage of the low prices, fill up your clinics as much as possible, get the word of mouth going so that in a year or 2 years, whatever it is, you can start raising those prices. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely can. Yeah, and you can keeping the prices down if you have a lot of kids, you can make a good amount for a college kid, obviously not
Yeah.
for a living wage, you know, make your good amount of beer money or whatever it is
You
for
do
you.
the math in your
But
head.
yeah.
You're like, yeah, if I can just get 10 kids at this price, I'll be happy. Like I did the same thing in college with t-shirts.
Yeah,
Like if I
exactly.
could just get these 20 shirts off my hands, like I'll have a good weekend. I'll be good here. So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
could work basic like that. I feel like sometimes you can kind of get intimidated starting a business and think too big. It's like, hey, all you need is map out what's one kid cost and how many kids do you need and go from
Yeah,
there.
exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Just gotta start.
All right. Anything else you want to add in here before we round it out? Anything you'd like to talk to younger Andy about? Any crap that you've been through that was a headache you've learned from?
Um, I mean,
No
everything
horror
I learned was
stories?
from trial and
Yeah.
error. No, not really any horror stories. I was really lucky. There was one time I think I've had throughout my entire time of working. I think every parent's been great. I don't think I've had any issues with parents, which has been amazing. Which I know is not the case for all programs, but I did get in an argument with a few of my buddies because I have a pay as you go mentality, so that like you can pay when you come. So like you can like for AAU, you don't pay like a full price at the beginning. And the reason I did that was because I was a multi-sport athlete growing up. So I get that, you know, Bobby, whoever it is, has a baseball game, so he can't come to practice tonight. So, but he might not want to do AAU over the summer if he doesn't, if he has to pay up front. So having that pay as you go
Mm-hmm.
mentality actually in my opinion, brings in a few more um, clients, I guess, players. And I'd gotten in this big argument with my two of my best friends who were working for me, and we were arguing, and they were like, "Dude, you got to have people pay in full, like, all this." And we had sat down and talked about it for a while, and we ended up keeping it pay as you go, just because like I hadn't really like expressed them why I did it and why I
Mm-hmm.
had that, and we just had to talk through it. Um, and actually, one of my buddies, we were talking about the other day. He got asked about like if you've ever had any like issues in a work environment, like any problems come up, and he talked about that in his interview. So definitely there are some bumps in the road, and I think luckily we us three handled it the right way. Like we were best friends. We knew how to do it the right way and the mature way, and we're still best friends. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
really good thing that we did. But I guess like the only thing I'd say is like there were some late nights for sure where I was up late grinding on scheduling, or renting out gyms, or figuring out like schedules for tournaments and all that kind of stuff, and like texting parents. Like there was a ton of work that had to be done. So I think luckily with that trial and error I was talking about, like I was able to figure out like a process, and I have like a copy and paste text that I sent for tournaments now, like a lot of stuff that I have figured out throughout the way. So it's that was like that's a great part about it. You learn so much. But
Mm-hmm.
the advice to my younger self, like just start easy right away. Like why'd you have to have all these late nights when you could have done it this so much easier way? So
Mm-hmm.
definitely that has helped, all that trial and error. But yeah.
You probably don't learn that easy way until you screw up like 10 times, and then
Yeah,
you
no, you
learn.
don't.
Okay,
Yeah, you
yeah.
don't. Yeah, until you send the wrong day for a tournament and tell the kids, oh, we play Saturday, but you're actually playing Sunday, and then like there was a time I had texted parents that we played Saturday at 8 a.m. instead of Sunday at 8 a.m. And like usually Friday night I'll stroll through the text and make sure everything looks good.
Mm-hmm.
And I had noticed the mistake, and it was like 1 a.m. So that was that I felt so bad, and I like texted all the parents, and luckily most of the parents like woke up and were like, "Oh, it's all good. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we'll see you Sunday." Like it still worked out. Um, and I had told the kids Sunday at practice, so a lot of the kids were like, "Wait, the kids were like, we play Sunday," because it was like a Friday night practice. So the kids were telling their parents, "We're like, no, we play Sunday, not Saturday." So luckily, it worked out the right way, but there are a few like scary moments with that where you're like, "Oh no, like totally messed up." But
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, that's probably why you haven't had too many issues yet. I mean, maybe you have a lucky group of parents, but also too, like when parents see that you're busting your ass for the program and like you're up at 1 a.m. like figuring things out and things like that, they're gonna, even if you messed up their early morning on a Saturday, like they're gonna respect that like you're working hard to make this happen. So I feel like that probably goes the
yeah,
longest
totally,
way.
totally. Yeah, they definitely
Awesome.
do respect the grind and hustle. Yeah.
Awesome. There's a lot of other things I'd like to get into. Maybe next time we talk about Camp Hope and the tournaments that you've done and all these different things you've been
Yes,
working on over the summers.
definitely.
But for now, we'll close it out for this one. Appreciate you diving into the details of starting your college business. Do you have it? Do you know if you're going to keep doing this come next summer? Come next year?
Yeah, there'll be a winter camp. There'll be a winter camp around Christmas, and we'll definitely be back at it next summer. I have a fall term to finish up, so hopefully work 2 jobs this summer again, and yeah, hopefully whatever job I am working after college, I can keep doing hard work hoops at some form, or take a hire a few more coaches and take a step away. But definitely still want to keep the basketball in the Lake Bluff and Lake Forest community.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. Well, appreciate it, Andy. We'll be talking soon. We'll have you on probably maybe come winter to the winter break. We'll check in and see how things are going.
Yeah, yeah,
All right.
sounds good. Sounds good. Thanks for having me.